You've been taught that love is salvation, that loneliness is failure, and that happiness only comes when you have someone by your side. But what if all of that is just a story told so many times that you believe it to be true? What if loneliness is not a sign of error, but an invitation from the soul, a door that opens the way back to yourself? In this video, I won't tell you that you need someone to heal you. I'll show you why some wounds can only heal in silence, why some strengths can only emerge when no one is there to witness them, and why the truest version of you will never awaken if you continue to seek validation from others. Carl Jung once said, "He who does not face his own darkness sees it in others and calls it fate." We are not afraid of loneliness. We are afraid of ourselves when we have no one to distract us. And so, solitude can be a terrifying journey, but it is also the beginning of the deepest awakening. Stay until the end, because you will not just hear about solitude, you will experience yourself again. No longer as a role, no longer as a plea for love, but as a return, silent, profound, irreversible. And when you understand this, you will no longer need connection to survive. You will become that connection. This is not just a video, this is an invitation. And if you are ready, let's begin. From a young age, you are programmed to believe that the presence of others is a necessary condition for your self-worth. A quiet child is called strange, unapproachable. A single adult is looked at with suspicion, pity, even pity. Loneliness, in the eyes of society, is always something that needs to be fixed, as if it were a flaw in life. From a very early age, we learn to live through the eyes of others. We are praised when we are cute, loved when we are good, accepted when we are sociable. And from there, we begin to build a me that fits the world, a version that knows how to please, how to avoid, how to not cause trouble. Carl Jung called it a persona, a social mask that each of us is forced to wear. But the problem is that when we wear it for too long, we begin to forget what our true face is. Loneliness is not scary because it is empty. It's scary because when there's no one around, no role to play, we begin to hear our true voices, voices that have been suppressed, forgotten or denied for so long, emotions that have never been processed, pains that have never been named. When there's no one to perform for, we begin to see ourselves naked, and that, for most of us, is a deeply unsettling experience. We live in a culture that worships connection, but fears being truly present with ourselves. We cling to relationships the way a lost person clings to a crowd, not out of love, but out of fear of being alone. We use love as a painkiller, work as an anesthetic, anything to avoid facing the truth. We have abandoned ourselves long ago, but loneliness, when approached consciously, is not a punishment. It is an invitation to strip away every mask, every defense mechanism, every compromise that has been built just to be accepted. Because without silence, how would you know you're pretending? We've been taught wrong about solitude. No one tells you that it's where the soul begins to awaken. That silence isn't just a void, it's a door to the inside. That you don't always need another hand to hold. Sometimes what you need most is to sit alone, long enough, still enough, to listen to what's inside you that wants to be heard. It's easy to say you're okay when you're loved. It's easy to feel fulfilled when you're acknowledged. But do you feel the same when it's all gone? When there are no compliments, no looks, no one left? It's in those moments, when you're stripped of all external validation, that the truth begins to emerge. The truth about the fear of abandonment, the truth about being loved, and the truth that you have become so used to judging your worth through the eyes of others. And this is where you need to ask, who am I when no one is around? Not to blame yourself, but to take back control. No one but you can answer that question. But when you start asking, you start an important process. The process of coming back to yourself. Breaking old beliefs is not easy. They have been planted, nurtured, reinforced with every look, every word, every expectation. But you don't have to destroy them with anger. You just have to see them clearly. And when you see them clearly, you have the power to choose again. Not to choose life again, but to choose how you see yourself. No one has ever been taught that solitude can be sacred, but because of that, you have the opportunity to start teaching it again, to yourself, and maybe to the world around you. That being alone is not lack. It's a completeness that begins without proof. That silence is not the end, but the beginning of a language that only the soul can understand. And that sometimes, not having anyone there is the best thing that can happen, because only then do you have the chance to be there with yourself, truly. When there are no more voices, when social media goes silent, when messages stop pouring in, and schedules suddenly empty, silence is no longer silence. It starts screaming, not with sounds, but with emotions you thought had disappeared a long time ago. Nameless sadness comes back, like a cold mist. An unexplained anger rises from somewhere in your chest. Uncertainty gnaws at every moment. Nothing happens, and because of that, everything inside you starts to speak. This is when you meet the shadow that Carl Jung once talked about. Not an evil part that needs to be banished, but a part that you have refused to acknowledge because it doesn't fit the image you want to maintain. The shadow is all the emotions you've kept hidden. Jealousy, resentment, disappointment, guilt, even desires that you told yourself shouldn't have. They all accumulate, and in silence, they can no longer be suppressed. They begin to emerge. Facing the shadow is not easy. It feels like you are going backwards, like you are crumbling, like you are losing control. But the truth is, you are not falling apart. You are purging. Nothing is being destroyed. It is just that the thick layers of dust are being brushed away, so that you can see more clearly the real face you have lived through all those years of playing a role. In modern culture, we are so used to avoiding emotions, feeling sad, turn on a movie, lonely, scroll through your phone, feeling empty, shop, text, eat, work, date, all to avoid feeling like something is wrong. But when you are alone, truly alone, those mechanisms stop working. And this is where a lot of people give up. They return to old routines, to relationships that don't really suit them, just to escape the shadow that is knocking at the door. But if you have the courage to stop running, to sit still and look directly at what rises in the darkness, you will realize pain is not the enemy. It is a guide. It shows you what wounds remain unhealed, what memories remain trapped, and what parts of you have never been loved. Most of the emotions you call negative are simply unheard. Anger is not bad. It is just signaling a boundary you have allowed others to cross for too long. Sadness is not scary. It is just pointing to where you need a break. Loneliness is not weak. It is just calling you back to yourself. And in that state of facing, something strange happens. Although it may be frightening at first, the more you accept the truth, the more something inside you becomes stable. When you stop avoiding your emotions, you begin to own them. When you let sadness be, it begins to fade. Not because you try to deal with it, but because you stop resisting it. Carl Jung said, "He who does not become conscious of his shadow is controlled by it and calls it fate." And this is why so many people repeat the same relationships that hurt them, the same jobs that drain them, the same choices that bring them back to pain. Not because they don't deserve better, but because they have never dared to face the part of themselves that is still neglected. The shadow doesn't go away when you pretend it doesn't exist. It just retreats deeper into the unconscious, controlling your actions, your choices, and your emotions without you even realizing it. But when you invite it into the light, not out of fear but out of curiosity, it begins to transform. This is not an easy process. There will be days when you feel like you're slipping into nothingness. There will be nights when it feels like there's nothing left to hold on to. But in those moments, something is being created within you, a quiet strength, a new consciousness, a foundation that no one can take away. Not because you've overcome the pain, but because you've stayed with it until it no longer needs to scream. Sometimes, the healing process isn't comfortable. It doesn't come with bright lights or positive emotions. It comes silently, through labored breaths, through layers of forgotten memories. But if you are patient, if you are kind to yourself, you will realize the shadow is just the part of you that has been rejected. And when it is accepted, it becomes a part of your power. This is the turning point. You are no longer a victim of what has happened. You become the observer, the healer, the one who has the power to choose. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be honest. You don't have to pretend to be nice. You just have to be brave enough to be. And when you do that, something incredibly important happens. You begin to touch your inner freedom. Not the shallow freedom measured in money or free time, but the deep freedom, when you are no longer afraid of your own feelings, when you can sit with sadness, laugh in solitude, and quietly say to yourself, "I am still here. I never left." That is not the end. That is the beginning of living at a new depth. A depth that you don't need to express in words. Others may not see it, but they will feel it. Your presence begins to change. And from then on, you no longer walk as someone who is looking for something out there. You begin to walk as if you are the place. After you've faced the brokenness, the darkness within yourself, what comes naturally isn't a bright light or a sense of triumph. It's a void, a different silence, no longer screaming but still thick. Like you've come out of a storm, and now there's just the wet ground, the grey sky, and you, alone. Not as painful as before, but still unclear. That's when you think you're falling apart. But no, you're not falling apart. You're reborn. And this rebirth doesn't happen with music playing or a halo appearing. It starts with little things, quietly, like breathing easier, like saying no to a conversation that's no longer relevant, like realizing you don't have to explain things anymore. You start recreating from within, not in the image of someone out there, not as an upgraded version to be more appealing to the world. It's about returning to something core, a truth you once knew, but had forgotten. You are already enough. This process is not linear. One day you feel like you are making great progress, calm, awake, grounded. Then the next day you suddenly find yourself in doubt, tired, empty. But that's not a sign of failure. It's the nature of the restructuring process. You're not going up a straight line. You're transforming in a spiral, back to where you were before, but deeper. Each time you return to an old pain, you see it with new eyes. No more panic, no more blame, just seeing, understanding, and moving on. Carl Jung once described this process as individuation, the process of becoming yourself, not who others expect you to be, not the role you've become accustomed to playing, but who you really are, whole and unique. And the interesting thing is, you don't need anything more to become that person. You simply strip away what is not yours. Rebirth is not about creating a new self. It is about letting go of the old self. It is when you stop trying to be loved, accepted, pleasing. It is when you stop living to rationalize your existence. You simply are, without explanation, without asking permission to be yourself. And when you start living like this, you will find that the smallest things become sacred. A quiet, unhurried morning, a meal you cook yourself, a moment of sitting still without checking your phone. Things that were once considered mundane suddenly take on a deeply healing meaning, not because they are special, but because you are fully present in them. Your presence begins to change frequency. You no longer speak to be heard. You speak because you have something to share. You no longer stay in a relationship to avoid feeling lonely. You stay because there is a real connection. You no longer try to fit in. You step into a space and see for yourself whether the energy is still in tune. Reinvention is not something that is done in a week, a month, or a year. It is a living, ever-expanding, ever-challenging journey, and it does not remove the hurt, but it changes how you deal with the hurt. It does not erase the fear, but it teaches you how to walk with the fear without being controlled by it. One day, you will look back at yourself now, struggling, vulnerable, questioning, and you will be thankful, because from this place of uncertainty, you did not turn back. You stayed, you listened to yourself, and you began to clean up the house inside, a place that had been neglected for so long. Reinvention does not need a declaration. It does not need a certificate. It just needs sincerity. And when you live with that authenticity, day by day, choice by choice, step by step, you no longer live as someone who is looking for acceptance. You live as someone who has chosen you. And that is the most beautiful thing a human being can do. Choose yourself, even when no one else does. You are not broken. You are letting go. And in that letting go, a new person is being formed. Not in a hurry, not in a show, but more fully, more honestly, and more deeply than ever before. The just reveng. When you have the courage to face your shadow and the patience to walk the quiet journey of rebirth, what follows is not a search. It is a very new feeling, a knowing without reason, a knowing without reasoning, a kind of quiet yet steady intuition that arises from within. This is when you no longer need to ask others what to do. You begin to sense what is right for you, what is not. No need for long-term planning, no need for logical predictions. You know when to retreat, know when to open up, know when to stop, and you trust that knowing, even if it is not proven. Carl Jung called this one of the 4 basic functions of the mind. Intuition, not a random hunch, a kind of deep wisdom, where the subconscious, experience, and subtle observation converge into a feeling that cannot be explained in words, but is always true for you. Intuition cannot speak when your mind is too noisy. It cannot get in between your fears, your expectations, your need for validation. It only begins to emerge when you have cleared enough space inside you to listen without judgment. And that only happens when you are no longer living to please others. When you are self-sufficient, that fullness does not come from having it all. It comes from not lacking yourself. No longer abandoning yourself to some model out there. No longer looking for a hand to save you. No longer afraid when there is no one to talk to. Self-sufficiency is when you sit in a quiet room, and still feel present, still feel alive, still feel full. When you are in that state, alone but not lonely, silent but not empty, you begin to feel your own direction. You are no longer led by lack, you are led from within. And the strange thing is, when you stop trying to change the world starts changing around you. When you stop trying to assert something, your presence becomes the answer. Others will sense something in you, an unpretentious consistency, a certainty that needs no explanation. That is the energy of people who live from within. They don't need to be understood to feel safe. They don't need approval to feel right. They don't need to be loved to know they have value. And so they become attractive without trying. When you live from that place, you begin to reset every choice in your life. Not by standards, but by frequency. Not by habit, but by authenticity. What once seemed attractive becomes heavy. Those who once made you tremble with fear of losing no longer move you. Not because you are arrogant, but because you have reconnected with the source of your power, yourself. You begin to live more simply. Every decision no longer comes from pressure or panic, but from clarity. A soft but unshakable kind of clarity. And every time you choose to be true to yourself, you send a clear signal to the world. I believe in myself. And the world, strangely enough, begins to believe in you. This self-sufficiency does not close doors. It does not make you cold or distant. On the contrary, it makes you more accessible, because you no longer connect out of need, but out of desire. No longer come out of fear of loss, but because you have something to give. You are no longer a seeker of love. You are a bearer of love. From there, you begin to lead. Not with words, but with energy. Not with will, but with consistency. And the most beautiful thing is you do not lead anyone else. You are simply a person who is on the right path for yourself. But just by doing so, you become a light for someone else who is struggling in the dark. Not because you tried to shine, but because you dared to turn off all the lights outside to find the fire within. And now it burns. Warm, real, unpretentious. That is the power of self-sufficiency, and that is where intuition begins to speak. Not screaming, not urging, just whispering loud enough for you to hear, and real enough for you to believe. When you have truly entered a state of self-sufficiency, something very important begins to change: the way you love. It is no longer a love that comes from lack, from the fear of loneliness, from the desire to be fulfilled. It is a love that comes from wholeness, from a place that is already full within yourself, and therefore can be shared without control. It is a huge shift from instinctive love to conscious love. No longer love to be saved, to be validated, to be seen, but love as a way of life, as a natural flow that comes from within. Carl Jung once said that no healthy relationship can be built on dependency. If you need someone to feel like you exist, that is not love, that is fusion. And fusion, sooner or later, becomes a burden, because you do not love the other person. You need them to escape from yourself. Conscious love begins when you no longer need someone to make you enough. You are enough. And from that fullness, you open not to fill a void, but to radiate a presence that is already filled from within. You will notice a very clear difference. Before, you may have been humble, quiet, withdrawn, just to avoid being left behind. You may have settled for less than you deserved, tried to please, played the good role to keep someone. But now you no longer feel the need for that. Not because you no longer want to love, but because you no longer need love to do for you what you have already done for yourself, to feel valuable, And when you love from that place, a place of not needing but willing to give, the relationship is no longer a place where you lose yourself. It is a place where you are seen more. You no longer wait to be loved the right way. You love the way you are, and that is enough. No more expectations, no more attachments, no more need to control. Love is not a demand, it is a welcome. You no longer need someone to compensate. You are a companion, and the other person no longer needs you as a solution. They are free. Two people, not dissolved, not possessive, not tied to roles or expectations. Simply two complete energy streams, choosing to walk side by side, not because of lack, but because there is something to share. Love is no longer trying to hold on. It is having the courage to let go when something is no longer suitable. It is no longer fighting to have someone. It is being fully present with the person next to you when they are truly there. No worry of losing, no clinging, no possessing. And when you love like that, love is no longer an event. It is a state, an energy, a way of being. And the magic is, when you love without needing to be saved, you only attract people who are not looking for someone to save them. You meet from clarity, not from fragments. You connect from consciousness, not from wounds. So if love comes, it is no longer something you trade your freedom for. It is a place where freedom expands, where you do not shrink to make the other person feel big, where you do not disappear for love to exist. This is the reward of the journey back to yourself. You no longer love because you need. You love because you are that love. And if the other person does the same, then the meeting is no longer a merging of two fears. It is a resonance of two whole souls. No one needs saving. Both are simply there, fully, truly, together. If you have come this far on this journey, stop for a moment. There is nothing more to do. There is nothing more to understand. Just take a deep breath and feel your own presence in this moment. No trying, no proving, no being other than yourself. You have overcome the fear of being alone. You have quietly faced your shadow. You have bravely walked through the unseen rebirth process. You have touched your intuition. You have learned to love without losing yourself. And now, you need nothing more to be enough. You are already enough, right here. Carl Jung once said, "The most important encounter is the encounter with yourself." No external search can replace that, because once you have truly returned, every relationship, every decision, every path will come from the stability within you. So if you need something to remember this journey by, just one sentence: my presence is enough. It is not a slogan. It is an acknowledgement, a commitment to yourself, a silent but powerful declaration that from now on you will no longer leave yourself to chase after anyone or anything. You are home, and from here, you do not need to search. You are the starting point. Hold on to that enoughness, not as a destination, but as a way of life.